Greetings in the name of Ra and Newt. All that is good and great, all that is blessed and beautiful, all that is creative and conscious, and all that is positive and possible. May all your blessings be infinite like the night stars, and all good things be never ending. Hotep, I am Adiso Bancole, your host to Mind Vibes, Thoughts from a Curious Mind, a bi-monthly podcast series exploring and examining social phenomena then and now. Now, in this episode of Mind Vibes, I want to deal with what I call white fragility assisting white comfort. Now, I deal with this. Before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe, share, leave a comment. White fragility, assisting white comfort, comfort zone, white liberal anxiety. A commentary on Robin DeAngelo's White Fragility. Now, this stems from a conversation I had with a long-time, quote-unquote, liberal white friend. He had thought to make his distraught over this particular situation mine. He further needed to have me agree with his assessment of the situation to advance his comfort zone. Quote unquote, the color of your skin don't matter to me as long as we can live in harmony. Why can't we be friends? War. Now, in the theory of white fragility, Professor Robin DeAngelo deposits her ideas this way. White people in North America live in a social environment that protects and insulates them from race-based stress. This insulated environment of racial protection builds white expectations for racial comfort, while at the same time lowering their ability to tolerate racial stress, leading to what I refer to as white fragility. White fragility is a state in which even a minimal amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a range of defensive moves. These moves include the outward displays of emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and behaviors such as argumentations, silence, and leaving the stress-inducing situation. These behaviors, in turn, function to reinstate white racial equilibrium. This paper explicates the dynamics of white fragility. Now here, I wish to deal with, again, as I mentioned in my opening piece, and I had did this in my Off the Chest series that I did in 2019, where a longtime liberal friend of mine was distraught over an incident, which, by the way, there have been plenty of court cases where the same type of situation um, and the same conclusions was the same. However, this longtime friend and I really, to me, he's like a brother. I like him. I enjoy talking to him. We've hung out together and stuff, But he felt deeply disturbed for some reason that this person, who is black at the time, did not receive, quote unquote, a harsher punishment. But what was more fascinating about this incident wasn't his being perturbed by the outcome, but his need. His need to get me to be just as perturbed as he was. That somehow, for me not to agree with his assessment was kin to criminal. Now, I remember when the O.J. Simpson trial took place. And there was this whole long year that they were dealing with it. And they thought, the white community really thought that, yeah, I mean, hey, he gonna be, found guilty. So that means they were going to go through this whole program of him being sitting in jail and him having to um, try to get an appeal and stuff like that. So they banked on that, right? But now I want you to imagine yourself as a black worker, one of your office buildings, and your fellow white workers. And here you are, getting water from the water fountain. And the verdict comes in, not guilty. Now you, as a black co-worker, you have to go through all of these changes because you're going to be approached not by one, not by two, but almost all the whites in the office about this outcome. But we know he killed his wife and stuff. But the burden of proof was on the prosecution. The prosecutor, they didn't meet that burden. So, it didn't matter whether, he did it or not. The point is that they didn't meet that burden of proof. They had all these witnesses. But you now have to explain to this white, to make that white person comfortable. After the Dylan Ruth incident, a sister wrote an article, I believe, in the Washington Post, dealing with that idea. The idea that somehow, after this horrific tragedy, where 9 beautiful lives were taken by this racist white man, that somehow or another, we as black folks needed to find forgiveness in this heinous act. To diminish our anger, our feelings, to accommodate, quote unquote, white fragility. Only because it is the, quote unquote, Christian thing to do. Yet for us to be on this cruise of forgiveness or appeasement, it takes not only a psychological toll, but a most distressful emotional toll as well. That we as human beings cannot feel the weight, the pain of such horror, or that somehow we must be able to forget the atrocities of yesterday so that white can have the convenience of living joyfully and peacefully. That's nonsense. Total nonsense. What human being that even a dog finds it, hard to overcome their cruelty, the cruelty that was afflicted upon them. So what human being? Hey, you out of your mind? But your psyche has to be comforted. You can, but you have no problem of a black man prior to 1964 and his child walking down the sidewalk, and you and your child walking down the same sidewalk coming toward them. You have no problem seeing that black man have to debase himself in front of his child and pull his child, and the black child is like, well, what the heck is going on? Why are you doing that? To make you comfortable. That was law. That was law. That was written law in the South. You cannot be on the same sidewalk as a white man and his child. And yet, we're supposed to forget that? That doesn't make any sense. That's not being human. Now, in my episode, Black Mental Disorders, I deal with those blacks, Negroes, that seem very content in doing just that, to make whites more comfortable. Not having to take, not for whites taking responsibilities of their privilege, but oblivious to other people's suffering. To move within society without thought or recompense of blacks and other people of color's reality and experiences. This is not just a conservative paradigm, but a liberal, progressive white school of thought. The less stress they have about race, the more they can live in a fantasy world setting. And this is, and I've seen this time and time again, just like with my friend. Beautiful man, an actor just like me, has taught me a lot. But to take one incident and to blow it out of proportion, and then to try to, to get me to go along with that and say, yeah, you're right, to ease your psychological trauma without recompense, Again, the great, racist theorist said, Tim White said, when he was asked in one of his presentations, but does that mean we have to feel guilty? He said, no. This is not about guilt. Guilt is for what you have done. This is about responsibility. Because responsibility is for who you are. And Tim Weiss relates this whole idea of responsibility when he was talking about the gumbo soup, that his roommates made, and then, 2 or 3 days later, that gumbo soup is sticking to the pot and it's smelling, stinking up the house. But he didn't cook it. He didn't eat any. But he took the responsibility of cleaning that pot. Because that's just the type of person he is. And so we have to, as African people, say to white folks, we are not your father confessors. You cannot put that onus on us. I mean, we have our own experience that we have to deal with. We have our own critique that we have to deal with ourselves. There are things that we have to take care of. We have to take care of our own business. And our own business is being free. Our own business is being liberated from this horrific idea of you having to oppress us. But y'all got to get over that stuff. We are not here to make you comfortable. That is not our job. Our job is to be human beings. Our job is to be black, to be African American, to be fully an Afrocentric African cultural being becoming. That's our job. And then, once we deal with that, to begin a dialogue with you in earnest, not you, as I have dealt with the Ode to Woodstock, not you defining what justice is or defining what your concept of, this kind of utopic society. No. It is for us to come together to forge a human community that then will allow us to move above and beyond where we are. But as long as you, like my friend, continue this idea that somehow or another, at our expense, our emotional and psychological expense that somehow or another you have to be comforted, we will never move beyond where we are. As long as white America does not deal with who they are in earnest, we will be like a planet floating in space searching for a universal home, or like a lost ship in the middle of the sea looking for a port to dock. We cannot move beyond to a greater sense of humanity until whiteness is sufficiently examined, explored, and tossed away. It will only be then will we come to some form of humanity. Now, that was my episode on the White Fragility comfort zone. Until next time, this is the Diesel Biobank saying, may we all strive to bend the arc of justice towards humanity and believe that peace and love can be achieved. Madasi Peace.